All right, everybody, welcome to episode 2, season 2, I guess, right, Michelle, of the
Yes,
Web3
season
by
two.
3. Right now, today it's going to be the Web3 by 2. Our partner in crime, Mike Neubauer, your ops guy, is home welcoming into the family newest member, Michael Gabriel. So welcome. Happy for Mike and his family. So he will not be joining us today. Mike normally brings the technology angles and the aspects of operations of the integration of Web3. So our hostess Michelle today and myself will be focusing on the marketing and sales angles of Web3.
We
I'm
will.
joined I'm joined as always, Michelle Peterson Clark, coming to us from beautiful England.
Yeah, not so beautiful. We've had freezing fog the last couple of days. So that's a new one on this Australian, let me tell you.
What the heck is freezing fog? All right, well
It's fog that's very cold.
it's not much better in New Jersey, let me tell you. So I'm going to take us through the news if that's okay. We'll jump right
Yep.
in. We're going to be going through the marketing and sales angles for Web3. The purpose of this program is to help folks understand how to market and sell Web3 projects. Meaning, and I'm not talking the NFT crypto bro get rich quick. We're talking real businesses that are looking to integrate Web3 projects, which we'll talk about, what they get right, what they get wrong, and what you can learn and do for yourself. Story number 1. This is coming to us from CNBC. Chat GPT replaces crypto as the hot topic at Davos. So the World Economic Forum was this week. Actually, it was last week. Generative AI has replaced crypto as the hyped technology of choice at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. So, Michelle, I think this was your find, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on
So
Chat GPT being the new hot thing?
interesting thing, isn't it? I've been reading a few stories about like what Davos was like last year and what it was like this year. So, for people that don't know about what happens at Davos, is that there's a main street in Davos, and essentially businesses make a deal with the cafes or the restaurants or the shop fronts that are particularly there, like during the year, I assume, are normal places of business before Davos turns up once a year. And so they kind of do JVs, I guess, with them, and then they display their wares, for want of a better word. So, like last year, there was the Bitcoin pizza place, and there was, all these other different things,
I remember that.
crypto.com, and all of those sorts of, the businesses that you see at the Formula One or the tennis or whatever, all of them had shop fronts. And this year there was very few of those, if you believe what was said. But everybody there this year was talking about Chat GPT. And I mean, we have talked about it. I don't know how many podcasts in a row. There was probably half a dozen in season 1, and we've talked about it last week and this week here too. And it's really is the flavor of the month, isn't it? And when you have big firms, big businesses who are on the stock exchange like Microsoft putting $10 billion into something, then people are going to take note and listen, aren't they?
Yeah, so for those who weren't paying attention the last couple of years, the crypto bros who all tried to get rich quick and then that disappeared with FTX have plowed into the AI space, right? Everyone is putting out their, I think you mentioned their little, I'm at the lounging by the pool. Here's my get rich quick with
Yeah.
generative AI for my quick free download, and you can make $5,000 a day. So that's what's going on in the Chat GPT world. Interestingly, the world powers have taken an interest because AI integrates well in the business community in a lot of ways, good and bad. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of conspiracy around the WEF, which we won't go into. But the point is, the business interests of the world are taking a sharp look at this, and obviously the rest of us are as well. In line with that, the other story here is coming out of Cointelegraph. The World Economic Forum has published their guide to DAOs, so the decentralized autonomous organizations. There's a 37-page toolkit that the WEF has put forth, and it recommends, that's their word, strategies for DAO governance and operations. So I so wish we had Mike Neubauer with us right now for the opinions on this one, Michelle. But what do you think about the WEF recommending how we should run our DAOs?
So, as a reminder to everyone as well, that we put up all the links and all the articles that we look at, so people can go back on them later and have a look. And I will put a link into the DAO document as well. It's a PDF that you can download. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I think that the reason why the World Economic Forum started with a DAO paper was, I think that they probably believe they can, that's one of the areas of Web3 that they may better be able to control by regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Keep going with this. I want the regulation tip is where this is headed, but finish your thought.
Yeah. And I think that the reason why they've come up with, I mean, let's face it, I don't think I've seen 37 pages written on DAOs in anything, even if you add quite a few of the Medium articles that you've read over time. But like that is a chunky, weighty piece of thought, leadership in a particular sector. And
you meant thought followership.
Yeah. And I think that I believe that they have done this because they really want to, carve the path in the direction that they want it to go. And then that ultimately leads to regulation.
Am I crazy to point out the interesting, the factor that there's a centralized organization telling people how to run decentralized organizations? I mean, the irony is rich. I'm not taking a side here, but clearly it's a Web3 show. But the point is, for any type of world body to issue rules on how individuals should run their DAOs, it's interesting. Now, I understand the concept of a unified protocol, right? That's one thing on a technology world where things need to interface with one another. DAOs, though, are very similar to companies in how they're structured and run.
Yes.
And they're different because of the Web3 factor. But think of them as a company. This is the world body telling you how to run your company. Now, I know this, you could argue standards for auditing and accounting, which is what they're getting at. That's why it's been angled as the operational and governance. That's what they're saying. But the very factor that the decentralized, autonomous, it's in the name, is being instructed on how the best way they should do it. The irony is it's outrageous, in my opinion.
Yeah. And as I said, like, this wasn't a 2-page prompt for the media to write a story. We're talking 37 pages of, them really looking into and considering what it is that you should do so that it can ultimately be regulated and controlled.
So let's get into the marketing piece of this whole thing, because I find this is really where I think the meat of what we want to talk about. There was a story that hit recently. Porsche, the automaker, has halted the minting of their NFTs. So they were offering a little tiny NFT of the Porsche 911, right? Very iconic vehicle. So they were selling 7,500 NFTs at roughly $1,500 a piece if you do the conversion from ETH.
Yeah.
And they stopped minting them because the fans went nuts. They were criticized. The community pushed back on this. And they basically told the company, too expensive. If you do the math, it's $11 million plus. They didn't like the fact that they were being raked over the coals. So I have my opinions on this before I share it. Michelle, what do you think about the Porsche situation? They're right now no longer minting that NFT.
So when you think about Porsche, it's a luxury brand, isn't it? So you've got people who like the best of the best, want the best of the best. And when you look at this mint and you look at what it is that people are getting for it, first of all, did their community even know about NFTs and what they are? Like, do they care? I don't know about that.
We can guess the average age of a Porsche owner, right? I mean,
and probably not is the answer to that question. My understanding from what I've looked at in terms of their marketing and that, they did like 2 or 3 weeks worth of marketing on it, like as in a release of, oh, this is what we're going to do and whatever. And it just smacks, like we've talked about a number of times before, of jumping on the bandwagon of, oh, we could make some money without really doing anything, and then maybe later on we might bring utility to the NFT. Like, it's not like you get tickets into the new Porsche release early, or Like you get to
You're talking
meet the
utility,
F1 drivers or whatever.
utilitarian value.
Yeah. So there's no value in these other than just getting the piece of art that the NFT is. And, it this is what happens when you don't educate your community, you don't build a proper community, and you don't actually think about what it is you're doing the NFT drop for.
So I think we're drawing the distinction here between a community and a buyer. Porsche,
Or a
by the way, I looked
following.
this up while you were chit-chatting. The average age of the Porsche 911 owner worldwide is 52 years old. Not
Yeah.
surprisingly. I don't know many 52-year-olds that are clamoring to get an NFT in their wallet. People buy it because they want to support the brand. That's the concept of community. However, when you're gouging is the word that I think people would use. When it is expensive and a money grab, which is what these look like for a small little NFT, 7,500 of them are being sold at $1,500 is very pricey. And
Yeah.
it's not like, to your point, Michelle, there's not any residual back end value. This doesn't get them access to the Porsche rally or a tour of the factory or any type of custom content about the making of the vehicles. Something
Yeah.
of interest like that would be worth paying for. Very similar to when people pay for the director's cut of the movie in the old days, and you would have interviews with the actors and
Yeah.
the behind the
You
scenes.
got something extra.
None of that. And so
Yeah.
the question really becomes, before you can reach into the pockets of your supporters, have you delivered them enough value up front? Are they really a community, or are they just people that have bought your product? There's a very big distinction there. And I
I
don't
mean,
think
no,
the companies understand that.
and nobody buys a Porsche because they think, oh, yay, I might get an NFT. Like that's just not, like the synergies just are not there. And I think Alfa Romeo are doing it. Nike have done it and whatever. I guess they thought, well, there's people that'll pay, two or
So
three $1,000 worth for a pair of shoes. Maybe they'll just buy an NFT because they bought a Porsche anyway. I don't know.
comment in the crowd from our friend, your friend and mine, Linda Ray. The whole value delivery thing is subjective, right? She's completely right.
Yeah,
Linda, thank you for the comment. 100%, but it is the job of the provider of the NFT to know what the utility and the value you could deliver to that community is. Porsche doesn't need to spend money. It's not that they need to go buy tickets to Formula One racing or whatnot and give these people. You could just host a dinner at the Porsche headquarters for all the holders. You can have a custom, Porsche test driving of their vehicles they already own on premises in Germany. There's so much you could do. And the point is, they didn't even try. It's one thing if the value doesn't connect. It's another thing if you didn't even try. This is the equivalent of me showing up at your house for dinner, Michelle, and not even bringing a bottle of wine, right? It
yeah,
doesn't need to be the bottle you like. I should bring
that's right.
cookies or something.
But I
So
mean, the other thing too, I think, is that an experience at the Porsche factory, or as I said, like an open day at the F1 testing track. Like we've been to it in Italy, and we've stood on the outside on top of the metal barriers hanging off the edge so we could see them test drive a car in there. You could have a stand that these people come in. Like I know at least 10 people that would buy one just to be able to do that experience.
So you may have been to these experiences, I'm sure, but I have, and especially finance. The fancy restaurants will walk you through the kitchen and you get to look at what they're preparing the food back there. They're literally people busting their butt chopping broccoli. It's not there.
Yeah.
There's nothing, but you feel special because you get to see a little bit of what other people don't get to see. Mind
Yes.
you, it's nothing great, but the point is it's distinct and unique. Porsche didn't need to spend money. They didn't need to do anything grand. They should have just tried something small to let their buyers feel special. And that's it.
Yes.
That
And they
creates
didn't.
community. And we're hammering
And
on this because it's been how many companies have we seen do this?
yeah, and there's going to be a few more before they get the message.
Well, I think that here's the question: at $1,500, the fan base pushes back on Porsche. At what price wouldn't they have? Right, and this is, I'm sure, what Porsche's thinking. Porsche's thinking
500,
to right. They're thinking to themselves,
800.
we. But here's my fear: the company believes they just simply priced it wrong. This is there's something more here than just we asked too much. there's a value exchange, and that is the word. And when there is that value exchange, there is community. You and I are both part of the Tilt community. Linda, I know you are as well. There's a feeling of community there because there's a value exchange. We support one another, etc. Lots of groups do this. The point is, when it's just money, if that's the exchange, and especially if it's lopsided in the amount, you not only have not built community, you've taken apart your community.
Yeah.
All right, moving us on to story 3. This is an interesting one. This is coming out of Cointelegraph, which is so apparently there's a company named CoinWire, coin everything, right? It's a crypto news organization, and CoinWire did
Cointelegraph.
Right, we're getting there. CoinWire did a survey of 10,000 investors. These are financial investors in the crypto world. And taking this survey, 69% of the users believe the metaverse entertainment will reshape the social lives. The term they used was social fabric of our lives, which is pretty strong terms. So in a nutshell, though, the areas that the metaverse is most expected to influence: social activities, 65% of the people believed; finances, 61%; business in general, 50%; and education, which was an interesting one, 45%. So basically, the question on the table is, what areas do you believe the metaverse will impact? And the investor community believes it to be social and financial. Thoughts on this, Michelle?
If it's financial for parents, it'll be to go down, won't it? When we
Which then impacts the social.
Buy our kids all the things that they want in the metaverse. Look, I think education is going to be a huge thing. I mean, like, I'm for people who don't know, I've got a master's degree in early modern history from Oxford. Can you imagine if you are studying a particular period in history and you can walk through a metaverse of the court of Henry VIII, or, Agincourt, or, that would excite me to no end. And, it could be a whole heap of other things. I could imagine that, like how doctors and veterinarians and dentists do training, on plastic dummies. Sometimes, they might be dead people.
I've worked with a lot of those people.
Yeah. And so could you imagine if you're learning to use a scalpel and cutting and learning those sorts of things within the metaverse, all in a really controlled environment, not actually doing anything with anyone, but learning those skills. So I think education's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, the social fabric stuff will be, people will meet up in the metaverse and they will walk around town and they will go to dance clubs and all of that sort of thing. I think we're a long way off yet from replacing people meeting in person, because I think one of the things that COVID taught us was that we still do crave in-person interaction.
Except in the offices, apparently.
Yeah, well, the office environment's probably a little bit different to meeting up and having a beer with your friends at your local pub, isn't it?
Yeah.
For me, I think those two are the largest ones. I'm struggling to see the finance stuff. I don't know about that because I'm not sure that I would want to be transacting my money in the metaverse yet. But
Yep.
maybe
I'm gonna
financial
agree with that.
education.
It reminds me of the
Sorry?
same reticence that people felt about spending their credit card on the internet back in the day. There is a valid argument that when stuff happens, that's where it happens. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
But I think you're right about one thing. The metaverse is not going to be tomorrow, right? This is the expectations of when its arrival and the impact it will bring to our lives, the social fabric of all of our lives. I think that's a bit overstated. And the reason I say that is because it's built for entertainment. Like, the metaverse is perfect. We've seen this already. Media and gaming, there'll be that type of entertainment, digital entertainment will happen in the metaverse. But beyond that, there's a huge leap. Yes, it could impact education. It could impact social. I don't know that people are going to spend time in the device that's required to then be in the metaverse. Right? This is not as simple as the Google Glass idea. Not yet, anyway. So I think it's interesting. It's something to keep an eye on. I think the confusion between the metaverse, Web3, blockchain in general, that's got to be clarified still. But this fantasy world of Ready Player One, not yet. I don't think so.
I mean, I think that ultimately it is coming in some form, but
Maybe for our kids. You really think it's like
maybe our grandkids.
yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think an interesting conversation, and I don't want to get into it, but AI would probably assist this whole thing quite well.
yeah, I agree with that. But I also think, like, I look at like my kid, my 14-year-old. We've got older kids that do it too, but my 14-year-old who plays on his computer and watches, he does 3 or 4 different things on his computer at the same time. He's watching a YouTube video, he's got the Man U soccer on, and he's chatting to his friends and also playing something, Fortnite or whatever. I'm not sure that he would be ready to give all of that up to sit passively with goggles on his face and just sit there and actually, talk to people or whatever. I'm not sure that multitasking that kids of that age at the moment go through, he'd be ready to give that up
Yeah.
for a one sort of, yeah. I don't
So I'll tell
I
you
don't
this,
think
years
so yet.
ago, when I introduced my kids to Xbox gaming and they were young, to really experience it, you need the headsets with the microphone, and they didn't want to wear them. They would rather just not have things on their head when they were playing. They were young, but the point
Yeah.
is, I think that by the older teen years, yes, no problem. But the device with which you enter the metaverse has to change. I'm talking like a metaverse room where you like the holodeck. You walk in
Yes.
there.
Yeah,
That's
the
different,
holodeck.
right? That at that
Yes.
point, I'm believing a metaverse is here. Right now,
Every house will have a holodeck. Yeah.
right? Which,
Maybe.
by the way, bears implications on travel, right? Experiential tourism, like that would be interesting to see how that develops. Anyway, our next story. China is launching smart contract functionality for their digital yuan. China's enabled smart contracts, the central bank digital coin that they are rolling out, the yuan that's digital, is being, interestingly enough, handled by an e-commerce company, Meituan, one of China's largest food delivery apps. So I guess they would know their way around the app.
Multitasking.
If the coin doesn't work, they'll be able to get you your lunch on time.
Yeah.
So we mentioned this to our colleague Mike. You know what Neubauer said when we mentioned you threw the story out?
I can't remember.
He responds in chat, "No, thanks."
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe if it came with a free fortune cookie, it might be all right.
The Chinese central bank digital coin makes people nervous simply because of the organization behind it, and it's very centralized. So this is something that centralizes power further over the money. Clearly, there's concerns. I think the interesting thing is whatever China does, good or bad, obviously it's being watched from a technology standpoint in the West. I also think that a lot of privacy advocates and folks of the tinfoil hat, they're all watching closely to get their argument up. So this will be a real litmus test, like a interesting test case to see how this goes. But
I mean, I think that if we take a step back and have a look at it as, countries issue bonds, they have their own currencies. They basically do what they like with their currency. Let's be honest, if they want to do some quantitative easing on the side, they do. If they want to tie it to a particular other currency or a commodity or whatever, they do. Is it Brazil that has Bitcoin as their as their main currency now?
was it El
So,
Salvador? I can't read. Yeah,
or is
but
it El
keep going.
Salvador?
I'm
Yeah, El
with you.
Salvador. And so, like I kind of see this. I think they're throwing the fishing line into the water and they're seeing what will bite.
Right.
And they're seeing if people will adopt it, if people will take it up. They're also looking to see what happens in terms of the value, if it goes up, down, etc. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily buy one, but then most of us in Web3 have some kind of cryptocurrency at various times, whether we've bought Ethereum or USDT or USDC or whatever. So yeah, I just think that them putting their toe in the water to see what the temperature is.
So I want to make one thing clear for those who aren't familiar with the way central banks work. This is not a matter of technology and an easier way to run your currency, which is what the narrative is. This is a way to control the ability to print money. And who
Yeah,
controls the currency controls the printing, which means if you can print more currency, digital or otherwise, you don't need to pay your debts. You print money.
yeah.
I should know I'm an American. And so the reality is China has no choice. If they want to challenge the dominance economic of Europe and the West, America, it's going to have control of the currency. This goes back into time immemorial history. This is when the Portuguese controlled the planet, or the Spanish, or the English. It's who controls the currency controls world trade. And right now, there's a little tug of war going on. And so, as China rolls their central bank coin out, it means that there's no question you can expect shortly Europe and America, in my opinion.
Look, I have no doubt that they're all trying to work out what they should do, how they should do it, when they should start, all of that,
So, this
no
rolls
doubt.
right into the next story, actually, Michelle. There's no point to EU crypto rules unless the world follows. Right. So, the European Commissioner, Mariad McGuinness, at the World Economic Forum is pushing for global crypto regulation framework. Europe has a new landmark regulatory rule in place, the Markets in Crypto Asset Regulation, MICA. And this is basically to govern crypto inside of Europe. The EU has crypto rules, finally, thank God.
Yeah.
West, over here in North America, we still do not. And so it doesn't matter if any one jurisdiction has their rules in place because crypto is global. And if it can't trade here, it'll just go there. Capital flight is the term they use in finance. And that is exactly what's going to happen because it sounds great to say unified crypto rules until you have different political interests. What are your thoughts, Michelle?
Well, do we have worldwide unified climate change rules? Do
Talk to
we,
Greta.
do we have worldwide, we're still at the point where we don't
We can't clean the plastic
coordinate.
up out of the Pacific Ocean's full of plastic. We're still working on
Yeah,
that one.
well, there's that. I was going to say, but like we don't even have jurisdiction in every country to be able to tap into police databases for criminals. I think it's an interesting thing that I think the EU have gone, yeah, this is probably a bit bigger and a bit harder than we thought. I think that they will introduce something ultimately, because they're with GDPR and all of these things that they have done with the 27 member countries, as a collective, but wanting or hoping that the rest of the world will jump on your train to implement and do the same things. I think that's a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah.
And I think that they will be sadly mistaken that by April they're going to, or May, I think they've deferred it to, that they're going to be able to get the world's, the other world leaders, even if it was, G8 countries on board. I think the other problem they've got too is that the FTX fallout in the US and Australia, and the other countries where they had subsidiaries, is not going to be cleaned up shortly or anytime soon. And so I don't think that those countries are going to want to get any kind of rules or regulations around it until they've sorted out what happened, what went wrong, and what can we do about it.
So for those who aren't following the story, the FTX news lately is that they have a new CEO in place. The company had filed for bankruptcy, and this new CEO, John Ray, is telling the press that he's looking into how to restart the exchange. So they want to resurrect this thing to try to get the money out of it rather than just close up shop. And as to wrap up our crypto segment, if you will, crypto lender Genesis has filed for bankruptcy. It's the latest. But the interesting point of this story, and the only thing I'll highlight, Genesis is estimating the liabilities that they owe are estimates external estimates of the liabilities that Genesis owes are between $1 billion and $10 billion. So
Yeah,
my math is
that's a
not the
bit of
best.
a gap.
I'm no math guy,
Like,
but that's a $9 billion swing that it may or may
it's
not be.
yeah, it's not like it's between 1 billion and 1.5 billion. It's
Right.
between 1 and 10. And the thing that is astounding about that is they don't know.
Well, that's the thing. This goes back to the old adage of a billion here and a billion there, and after a while, it starts to become real money. The truth of the matter is, if you don't know, $9 billion is an awful lot of money. If you don't know any ballpark idea of what you owe or what this firm is in debt for, number
Or
one,
is
yeah, this speaks to blockchain. It is not a blockchain transparent ledger. So for all the farce around Web3 and crypto and fraud, this is straight out of the old Lehman Brothers, Madoff, Enron. This is not Web3. This is not blockchain based business.
well, it's like going back to the FTX story and the CEO. They found, 5.5 billion here and then 3 million over there and 3.5 billion over here and 1.7 billion in this wallet, and then they had another thing here, and they're talking huge sums of money lying around in different pots. It's kind of like, when your old rich relative dies, don't sell the house until you've checked in all the under the floorboards and under the stairs and all of that to see all the bags of money that they would have left lying around. And it's kind of a little bit like that. And it's just astounding when you think about it. I mean, we're,
Amazing.
talking about sums of money that, the rest of us dream about, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But do you remember the early story out of this was that the money was gone?
yeah,
Just
yeah, it was
disappears.
gone.
All
Yeah.
right, our final story. This is just interesting of note. There's really no news here, but there's a company named Aptos Labs, APTOS, and the CEO of this company, they're a Web3 social media firm, is saying that society is ready for Web3 social, and that we can evolve the social connection of human society. And the reason I bring this up is because the founders of this firm are former Meta employees, Facebook.
Yeah.
And when you see
Yep.
that the connecting humans together was the entire Facebook pitch back in the day, they're doing it again in Web3. But again, this is Web3 means decentralized, like anonymous, pure Web3. So we're coming to a different version of what is Web3 is really a conversation at some point.
I mean, I think when you look at the story, though, he's really, I think that he's talking about wrapping Web3 in a Web2 raincoat,
That's
and
that takes us back to Porsche.
yeah, and that, that their whole premise that this will work is that, Meta lost 11 million European active monthly users for the second quarter in last year, and therefore, people are moving away or they're not, being on the platform as much, etc. And so they're looking for something else. Now, I don't know that that's true right now, because what I think's happening is that people are a little bit sick of being fed an algorithm of what it is that the company wants you to see or read or hear or watch. And people are turning off because of that, or they're being more selective. And, I just, as I said, I think that what they're doing is that they've got a Web2 raincoat and they're wrapping up Web3 in it. And they're just trying to make it sound new and bright and shiny and different. And I don't think it is.
And I think that is the theme that we're going to have for this week there, Michelle. You just nailed it. The Web3 wrapped in a Web2 raincoat, as you put it, is not going to cut it. When Porsche tries to pass it off as a Web3, or anyone for that matter, I'm not going to name company names here, but we know who they are, Starbucks, Nike, etc. They're all trying to sell stuff still. The concept of Web3 is not a new
Yes.
avenue to sell stuff down.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
concept is community building, create value for the users that support you such that they are loyal. I'll tell a quick story. Years ago, I went to a Q&A session for Gary Vaynerchuk at the Wine Library. It's not too far from my house. And it was $400, 50 people paid to be there. I'd consumed every piece of content this guy had put out for years. This is going back maybe 2016. Yeah. So it comes my turn to the question. And I said to him, Gary, I have no question for you. I know everything you're going to say. I've been listening to all your stuff. He said, why'd you come then? And I said, just to say thank you. He gives me a free case of wine. The story, though, is not that. When I left there with my wine, I thought to myself, why did I pay that money? Right? Really? Why would I? That's a lot of money. And I realized at that point, it's gratitude. You build a sense of, I owed you for the amount of value you've given me. I wanted to pay him. I was happy to pay him. And I learned a lot from the man over the years. So the point is, that's the ethos of Web3. You create the community sense of value such that the people want to pay you the money. Those people pushing back on Porsche, they don't feel a sense of loyalty and support, and they'll run through brick walls for that company. And that was Porsche's loss. I don't even think Porsche was trying to build that. I think they just were trying to make $11 million.
That spectacularly backfired, didn't it? Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things, though, that is in the article, they talk about building bridges and not walls. So the way we have social media right now is you have your Facebook profile, and a little bit different because Instagram and Facebook are owned by the same now. But, you know, you've got your Facebook profile, your Twitter profile, you've got your YouTube channel or whatever. And there's walls between them. So you have to create a new profile in each of them. You know, TikTok's different, you know, your Snapchat's different, whatever. By building bridges, what the opportunity that comes from Web3 is that I can be me, one personality, one profile, and I can go into the Web3 social platforms as my one self. I don't have to create a CM Queen in Mastodon. I don't have to create a CM Queen in Lens Protocol. I don't have to create a Facebook CM Queen, for example. I will be able to have the one profile, the one me, the one app, if you want to call it that, where I'm going to see all the information or all the things that I want or all the messages I get in the one thing. So that's about building bridges between these sorts of things and not having walls between them. Now, that's where, if someone can come up with a Web3 solution to that problem, that's where the money's going to be in Web3, and that's what people will join.
That's a great point. It's a great way to close it out as well. Could not agree more. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Next week, we'll be back with the third member of our stool here. And it's 4 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to try to hit it out on Twitter next week as well. And so we're going to be open to Q&A at some point and start getting a conversation going. But for now, just want to thank the people, Linda, folks who joined or are watching this later. We appreciate the time.
And thank remember, you for your time. It's only
good to see you as well, Michelle.
And the disclaimer that you say every week, you have to say
that. Yeah, now. Of course. We'd be foolish without. So this is not meant as investment advice, folks. These are just a couple of folks sharing ideas and reviewing what's going on in the space. You need to do your own research, right? This is in no way are we supporting or opposing any of these companies. But the reality is there's lessons to be learned. Web3 is new for everyone. And the way we learn best is by learning from each other. And the whole purpose of this show is what can we all collectively learn and deploy for ourselves if we're trying to build in the Web3 community. That's it. Education only.
Very good.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Next week. Thanks.
We'll see you next
Bye.
week. Cheers.
Bye.